The Las Vegas Raiders are making more moves in free agency that are not just about the quarterback. The Raiders have signed multiple players on the defensive side of the football. And the Raiders have grabbed a great safety, Marcus Epps, who did play in the Super Bowl last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was originally drafted in 2019 in the 6th round by the Minnesota Vikings, and then he went on to go and sign with the Eagles, and he's done quite well for himself, getting a 2-year contract, $12 million deal, 8 years guaranteed, about $6 million a year, basically 1.5 fully guaranteed contract. This is really a great value for a 27-year-old who played so many snaps last year. He actually had his career high in snaps last year for the Eagles, and he played alongside Gardner Johnson, and he was actually a great safety in terms of covering tight ends, playing into the box, amazing in run defense. The only problem with him is almost sort of like the Jonathan Abram problem, where when he's playing really deep, kind of has some trouble in coverage. So I think he's definitely going to be the strong safety opposite of Trayvon Merrick, who will be our free safety, probably playing a lot deeper, but he did play a lot of too high coverages as well. And I think he'll be a great run defender for the Raiders. And I think honestly, when it comes to covering tight ends and playing in the box, I do think he has a little better coverage skills than Jonathan Abram. So great value here at this position. The Raiders have also signed Brandon Facyson, a familiar face, Brandon Facyson, who did play with the Raiders for a little bit in 2021, the Rich Bisaccia year, but then he did, move on and actually go with Gus Bradley to the Indianapolis Colts. He actually traveled with him when Gus Bradley moved on from the Raiders, then joined the Colts, and had a decent year, and I actually always was impressed with the guy. He was somebody who the Raiders sort of signed because, they just needed some help due to injuries, and I thought he filled in pretty well, and honestly, he does thrive in the, cover 3 Gus Bradley defense. We'll see how Patrick Graham decides to use Facyson, but getting some more depth, at the corner position, I still could see them pursuing perhaps another veteran, maybe another starter at corner, or maybe they go and look to the draft at corner. They are really thin at that position. Not only are they thin at the cornerback position, but pretty much thin at every position besides edge rusher, but we do have Epps now. Curious to see what his number will be. And then Brandon Facyson to even out that cornerback room, but you really still just have Nate Hobbs. And Meek Robertson did play last year, but I thought he mainly played due to injuries to players like Anthony Averett and Rocky Scene. I wonder if the Raiders will bring back yet Rocky Scene. I did not see him sign with any other team today, so that is something to pay attention to, something to look out for. But the Raiders need help at linebacker for sure. Tremaine Edmonds ended up signing with the Bears. Maybe the Raiders will go after Denzel Perryman. He's still available, and we need help on, in the interior defensive line. We just have Farrell Jr., Bilal Nichols, who was paid last year on a 2-year contract, making a little less than what Epps is making, $5.5 million, but we desperately need to build this defense. That is why it is disappointing to see them sign Jimmy Garoppolo in some ways, because this guy's cap hit is still $16.5 million. I think you should just go with a cheaper veteran to help build this defense even more, and then draft a QB and just, throw them into the fire. Why not? Why not? You really need to build this defense in order to compete. You don't have many guys who, in my opinion, would be starters on other teams in the NFL. Outside of Max Crosby and Nate Hobbs and maybe Trayvon Merrick, it's really rough out there. Chandler Jones, when he's healthy, when he's rocking and rolling, yes, but if it's anything like last year, I don't know. So the Raiders need some help, and they only have $29 million in cap space to do it. And we know Mark Davis isn't like a lot of these other owners who are restructuring contracts. We've only had a Max Crosby restructuring. You see all these teams around the NFL, like the Dolphins, restructuring tons of contracts, and it just seems like they're able to buy everybody, buying all kinds of players. Meanwhile, the Raiders are making selective moves here, and this is really maybe a thing that has to do with Mark Davis. I often wonder if, Mark Davis is sort of interested in Josh McDaniels because he comes from that Patriots culture where they don't pay players too much. They sort of draft people and try to find a lot of, unproven talent, a lot of UDFAs. Think about it, JC Jackson, he was a UDFA when the Patriots had him before he got his big deal signing with the Chargers. And yeah, thanks Chargers for paying JC Jackson all that money, even though he didn't do much last year. So I wonder if Mark Davis wants to go cheap, and it's sort of what Josh McDaniels does anyways, coming from that New England culture. And that is maybe why you're not going to see too many huge signings, but I do think the Raiders should utilize that $29 million in cap space, invest interior defensive tackle still, and also find a great linebacker, find a great stud linebacker, and we need some help in the cornerback room. The Raiders could still maybe hit up James Bradbury, who has a relationship with Patrick Graham, get some veteran help at the cornerback position. He played with the Eagles last year. I think he would be a nice addition for the Raiders. But unfortunately, there's not many stud defensive tackles available right now in free agency. The Raiders may have to look to the draft unless they want to hit up somebody like Sheldon Rankins, who did not sign with everybody today, but Sheldon Rankins is sort of a guy who's not great but good. He's a good run defender, good pass rusher, but he's not great in both or one category. Either way, we'll keep you up to date with everything happening in free agency. I was in Vegas this whole past weekend, man, so I had a slow start to Monday, but Tuesday and Wednesday and the whole week will be locked and loaded.